The message arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning when most of the staff at United Earth Command were drinking their second cup of coffee and checking routine reports. Admiral Patricia Cole was reviewing a supply request from the Mars colony when her communications officer rushed into her office with a pale face and trembling hands. "Admiral, you need to see this immediately," the young officer said. "We are receiving a transmission from outside the solar system. It is not from any of our colonies." Patricia set down her coffee and followed him to the main situation room. By the time she arrived, a crowd had already gathered around the central holographic display. The room fell silent as she entered, and every pair of eyes turned toward her with the same unspoken question. The transmission began to play. A creature appeared in the hologram unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Its body was long and serpentine, covered in scales that shifted between purple and black. Multiple eyes dotted its head, each one moving independently, and when it spoke, the translation software struggled for a moment before catching up. "To the species known as humanity," the creature said, its voice thin and cold, like wind through dead branches. "I am High Arbiter Thesan of the Velanthi Hegemony, speaking on behalf of the Galactic Tribute Council.
How?
Your presence has been noted." Patricia felt a chill run down her spine. Humanity had known for decades that they were not alone in the universe. They had found ruins on distant moons, intercepted strange signals from far-off stars, and encountered the occasional trader vessel at the edges of their territory. But this was different. This was official contact from whatever power controlled this region of the galaxy. "Your expansion into 17 star systems has been recorded," Thesan continued. "Your development of faster-than-light travel has been observed. According to the Covenant of Lesser Worlds, established 47,000 cycles before your son gave birth to your planet. You are now required to submit tribute to the Council." The word tribute hung in the air like a threat. Patricia noticed. Commander Dennis Grant, moving closer to her, his jaw tight with tension. "The tribute required is as follows," the High Arbiter said, and his many eyes seemed to gleam with something that might have been amusement. "You will surrender 70% of your annual mineral production.
Yo!
You will surrender 60% of your agricultural output. You will provide 50,000 of your healthiest individuals each year for labor allocation across Council territories." Gasps echoed through the situation room. Patricia held up her hand for silence, her eyes never leaving the hologram. "Additionally," Thesan went on, "humanity will dismantle all military vessels larger than frigate class. You will accept the installation of compliance monitors on your homeworld and all colonial settlements. These monitors will ensure your continued cooperation with Council directives." The serpentine creature shifted on what appeared to be a throne made of crystal and metal. Behind him, Patricia could see other figures, representatives of species she did not recognize, watching the recording with expressions she could not read. "You have one standard cycle to deliver your response to the Council station at the edge of your territory. This station has been in place for 3,000 of your years, waiting for the moment when your species would grow mature enough to receive this message." Thesan leaned forward, and for a moment, Patricia felt as though those alien eyes were looking directly at her through time and space. "I will offer you a piece of wisdom, young species. The hegemony has existed for longer than your kind has walked upright. We have brought 712 species into compliance with the Covenant. Some came willingly, understanding that resistance was pointless. Others required correction. None have required correction twice." The transmission ended, leaving nothing but silence and the soft hum of equipment. Patricia stood motionless for a long moment, processing what she had just heard. Around her, voices began to rise as officers and analysts started talking over each other, their words mixing into a confused babble of fear and disbelief. "Quiet," she said, and her voice was not loud, but something in it cut through the noise like a blade. The room fell silent again. "I want a full analysis of this transmission within the hour. I want to know everything we have on the Velanthi Hegemony, the Tribute Council, and any species that has interacted with them. I want our intelligence teams working around the clock." She turned to Dennis. "Contact the Secretary General. Tell him we need an emergency session of the Security Assembly. Every nation, every colony, every settlement, This concerns all of humanity. Dennis nodded and hurried away to carry out her orders. Patricia remained in the Situation Room as her staff scrambled to their tasks. She walked slowly to the holographic display, now showing only a star map of human territory. 17 systems spread across a small corner of the galaxy. 300 years of expansion, of building, of dreaming about the stars, and now this. She thought about the words the High Arbiter had used: tribute, compliance, correction. They were the words of an empire, of a power so vast and so old that it viewed younger species the way humans might view insects. Something to be used, controlled, or crushed as needed. Patricia had spent her entire career in the military. She had fought in the water wars of the late 21st century, had commanded vessels in the brief conflict over asteroid mining rights, had helped establish order in the outer colonies during the difficult early years. She knew what it meant to face a superior force, to make hard decisions, to accept losses in pursuit of victory. But this was something else entirely. This was not a war between nations or corporations. This was not a dispute over resources or territory. This was a demand for submission, plain and simple. Council was not offering humanity a place at the table. They were offering humanity a place on the menu. She pulled up what little information their databases contained about the hegemony. Most of it came from traders, beings who operated at the edges of Council space and occasionally wandered into human territory. The stories they told were not encouraging. Species that paid tribute slowly withered away, their populations declining, their cultures fading, their worlds stripped of everything valuable. Species that refused tribute were destroyed, their planets burned, their people scattered. There seemed to be no middle ground, no third option, no way to negotiate a better outcome. Patricia stared at the star map for a long time, her mind turning over possibilities and discarding them one by one. Finally, she reached a conclusion that surprised even herself. Ash! If we are going to die either way, she murmured to the empty room, then let us die in a way that means something. She straightened her shoulders, took a deep breath, and went to prepare for the most important meeting in human history. The United Earth Security Assembly met in Geneva 3 days after the transmission arrived. Representatives from every nation on Earth and every colony in human space filled the great circular chamber, their faces showing a mixture of fear, anger, and confusion. The gallery above was packed with journalists and observers, though their cameras had been disabled for security reasons. What happened in this room would shape the future of the entire species. Secretary General Howard Price stood at the central podium, his gray hair and lined face making him look older than his 62 years. He had not slept more than a few hours since receiving Admiral Cole's call, and the weight of what he was about to discuss pressed down on him like a physical burden. "I will not waste time with pleasantries," he began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's speakers. "You have all seen the transmission. You all know what the Council demands. We are here to decide how humanity will respond." He stepped back from the podium, and the floor was open for debate. Ambassador Nina Walsh of the European Federation was the first to speak. She was a tall woman with sharp features and sharper eyes, known for her direct manner and her refusal to soften unpleasant truths. "Let me be clear about what is being asked of us," she said. 70% of our minerals, 60% of our food, 50,000 people every year. This is not tribute. This is slavery. This is the slow death of our civilization dressed up in diplomatic language. If we accept these terms, we will cease to exist as a free people within a generation. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber, but they were quickly followed by voices of dissent. Delegate Samuel Wong from the Pacific Coalition rose to respond. He was a careful man, known for his caution and his respect for numbers and probabilities. "I do not disagree with the ambassador's assessment of what these demands mean," he said, "but we must also consider what refusal means. Our intelligence reports suggest that the hegemony controls thousands of star systems. Their fleet numbers in the tens of thousands of warships. We have perhaps 300 vessels capable of meaningful combat. The mathematics here are not complicated. If we refuse, we will be destroyed. And if we accept, we will be destroyed slowly," Nina shot back. "Is that truly a better option?" "At least we would have time," Samuel replied. "Time to build, Time to plan. Time to find allies or develop new technologies. Immediate defiance offers us nothing but immediate death. The debate continued for hours, voices rising and falling, arguments clashing like waves against rocks. Some spoke of honor and dignity, of the human spirit and its refusal to bend. Others spoke of pragmatism and survival, of the need to live long enough to fight another day. Still others suggested compromise, negotiation, an attempt to reduce the tribute to something more bearable. Through it all, Admiral Patricia Cole sat in the observer section, watching and listening. She had been invited to provide military assessment, but she had remained silent, waiting for the right moment. That moment came when Representative Carlos Mendez from the South American Alliance asked her directly for her opinion. "Admiral Cole," he said, "you have spent more time studying this enemy than anyone else in this room. What do you believe our chances are if we fight?" Patricia rose from her seat and made her way to the central podium. She carried nothing with her, no notes or tablets or prepared speeches. When she spoke, her voice was calm and clear. "Our chances of winning a conventional war against the hegemony are essentially zero," she said. "They have more ships, more resources, more experience. If we meet them in open battle, fleet against fleet, we will lose." The chamber fell into a heavy silence. Patricia let it hang for a moment before continuing. "However, I have spent the last 3 days reading every piece of information we have about the Tribute Council and the species that serve it. I have studied the records of traders, the intercepted communications, the histories of those 712 corrected species, and I have learned something very interesting." She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of delegates and ambassadors, leaders and representatives. Every species that submitted to the council is now either extinct or exists as a hollow shell, their population reduced to a fraction of what it once was. Their culture erased, their world stripped bare. Submission did not save them. It only delayed their end while making that end more certain. What of the species that fought? Someone called out. "They were destroyed as well," Patricia admitted. "But here is the crucial difference. They were destroyed quickly in battle, with their dignity intact. The submitting species died slowly, over generations. Watching their children taken away, their resources stolen, their future erased piece by piece, they died in despair. The fighting species died with hope." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "But there is something else, something the council may not have considered. The species that fought in the past were alone. They faced the hegemony without allies, without support, without anyone to learn from their example. We are in a different position. We are not the only species in this galaxy that resents the council's rule. We are simply the first in a very long time to have the chance to say no." Secretary General Price leaned forward. "What exactly are you suggesting, Admiral?" Patricia turned to face him directly. "I am suggesting that we refuse the tribute, not because we believe we can win, but because we believe that winning is not the only thing that matters. If we fight, even if we lose, we send a message to every oppressed species in this galaxy. We show them that resistance is possible. We give them hope. If that hope leads them to destruction as well, then at least they will die free," Patricia said. "At least they will die having made a choice. That is more than the council has ever offered anyone."
Ow!
The chamber erupted into debate once more, but Patricia could sense a shift in the mood. Something had changed. The fear was still there, but it was being joined by something else. Something harder, fiercer, older than fear. When the vote was finally called, it was not unanimous. There were voices of dissent, representatives who believed that survival at any cost was better than principled death. But they were in the minority by a margin of 73%. The United Earth Security Assembly voted to reject the Council's demands. Humanity had made its choice. Now they would have to live with the consequences. The Council station hung at the edge of human space like a silent warning. It was enormous, larger than any structure humanity had ever built. A sphere of gleaming metal and pulsing energy fields that had waited in the darkness for 3,000 years. Inside its walls, representatives of 17 tributary species gathered to witness the young species called humanity deliver their Response to the Council's demands. Ambassador. Gregory Palmer arrived aboard the diplomatic vessel Horizon, accompanied by a small delegation of aides and translators. He was not what most people expected when they thought of a diplomat representing all of humanity. He was 64 years old, with thinning gray hair and a soft, weathered face. His voice was gentle, his manner calm, his eyes kind. He looked more like a grandfather than a representative of a species facing extinction. High Arbiter. Thiessen received him in the station's central chamber, a vast space filled with floating platforms and holographic displays. The serpentine ruler of the Velanthi hegemony coiled around his crystalline throne, surrounded by his advisors and the representatives of the tributary species. They watched the human delegation approach with expressions that ranged from curiosity to contempt. Gregory walked slowly across the polished floor, his footsteps echoing in the enormous space. His aides followed behind him, their faces carefully neutral despite the fear they must have felt. This was the heart of an empire that had crushed hundreds of civilizations. One wrong word could mean the end of everything. "You are the one they have sent," Thiessen said, his translated voice filling the chamber. "A single old man to speak for your entire species. Is this meant to be an insult?" Gregory stopped at a respectful distance from the throne and offered a small bow. "No insult is intended, High Arbiter. I was chosen because my people believe that age sometimes brings wisdom, and wisdom is what this moment requires." "Wisdom would have been accepting our terms without delay," Thiessen replied. "Wisdom would have been recognizing your place in the natural order of things. You are a young species, barely out of your cradle. We are older than your recorded history. Wisdom would have taught you humility," perhaps Gregory said. "Or perhaps wisdom teaches different lessons to different peoples. On my world, we have a saying, 'The tree that bends survives the storm.' But we also have another saying, 'Some storms require you to stand firm.'" Thessan's many eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture that might have indicated amusement or annoyance. "You speak in riddles, human? I did not summon you here for philosophy. I summoned you here for an answer. Do you accept the tribute, or do you require correction?" Gregory reached into his coat pocket and withdrew a small data chip. It was a simple thing, barely larger than his thumbnail, but it contained the most important document in human history. He held it up for a moment, letting the light catch its surface, then stepped forward and placed it gently on the platform before the High Arbiter's throne. "This chip contains the official response of United Earth to your demands," he said. "Every member of our security assembly has signed it. It represents the unanimous voice of my species." Thiessen gestured, and the chip activated, projecting its contents into the air above them. Every being in the chamber could see it clearly. Every being in the chamber fell silent when they read it. A single word hung in the holographic display, written in the standard galactic script that all species could understand: "No." For a long moment, no one spoke. The silence was so complete that Gregory could hear his own heartbeat, steady and calm despite everything. Then Thiessen spoke, and his voice was cold, with barely controlled rage. "This is your answer?" One word. No explanation, no counterproposal, no request for mercy? "You dare to dismiss the authority of the Council with a single syllable?" Gregory smiled, and it was a gentle smile, the kind a teacher might give to a student who had asked the wrong question. "High Arbiter, my people discussed many possible responses. Some wanted to write lengthy explanations of our history, our values, our commitment to freedom and self-determination. Others wanted to include detailed military analysis or economic arguments. We considered threats, pleas, bargains, and compromises." He paused, looking around the chamber at the representatives of the tributary species. Many of them were watching him with something in their eyes that he could not quite identify. Fear, perhaps, or something else. "In the end," he continued, "we decided that our answer needed no elaboration. The word 'no' is complete in itself. It requires no justification, no explanation, no defense. It is the answer of a free people to those who would make them slaves. It is the only answer we have." Thiessen's coils tightened around his throne, and his scales shifted from purple to a deep, angry red. "Then you have chosen correction. You have chosen the destruction of your species." I hope your one word brings you comfort when your worlds burn and your children weep. Perhaps it will, Gregory replied, and his voice remained steady. But before you send your fleets, High Arbiter, I would suggest that you study the history of my people. We are a stubborn species. We have fought against impossible odds before, and we have survived. We have faced empires that thought themselves invincible, and we have outlasted them. We have looked at death and refused to blink. He turned to address not just Thesan, but all the representatives in the chamber, all the tributary species who had come to witness humanity's humiliation. We did not ask for this confrontation. We did not seek out your counsel or your hegemony. We were content to explore our small corner of the galaxy and build our civilization in peace. But you came to us with demands and threats, and you've left us no choice but to respond. His voice rose slightly, taking on a strength that seemed at odds with his gentle appearance. So here is our response. No, we will not pay your tribute. We will not surrender our resources. We will not give you our people. We will not disarm our ships. And we will not accept your monitors. We are a free people, and we will remain free until the last human heart stops beating. He turned and began walking back toward the exit, his delegation falling in behind him. At the doorway, he paused and looked back one final time. You have our answer, High Arbiter? It will not change. Send your fleets if you must, but remember this. Every empire that has tried to conquer humanity has failed. Every tyrant who thought he could break our spirit has been proven wrong. We do not know how to surrender. We never learned. With that, Ambassador Gregory Palmer, the soft-spoken grandfather from a small blue planet, walked out of the council station and into history. Behind him, in the great chamber, 17 species watched him go with something new burning in their eyes. Hope, the hegemony fleet arrived, exactly 1 week after Ambassador Palmer delivered humanity's response. 400 warships emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. Their hulls gleaming with the dark metal that was the signature of Council military vessels. They formed a perfect sphere around the outer planets, a noose slowly tightening around the cradle of human civilization. Fleet. Master Vorik of the Cassani species commanded the correction force from the bridge of his flagship, a massive vessel called the Obedience. He was a veteran of 37 corrections, a being who had watched dozens of species realize the futility of resistance and accept their place in the natural order. He expected this correction to be no different. The human fleet that waited for him was laughably small. 187 vessels, ranged in a defensive formation between the enemy and Earth. Most of them were cruisers and destroyers, with only a handful of battleships and carriers. By every calculation, by every historical precedent, this should have been over an hour's. Captain Denise Harper stood on the bridge of the battleship Defiance, watching the enemy formation on her tactical display. She was 38 years old, with dark hair cut short for practicality and eyes that had seen enough combat to know what was coming. Around her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency. Each person focused on their station, their training. Their duty, they are broadcasting a surrender demand. Lieutenant Kevin Park reported from the communications station. Standard terms. Immediate disarmament and acceptance of correction protocols. Nor it, Denise replied. Open a channel to Admiral Cole. Patricia's face appeared on the main screen. She was aboard the carrier Resolution, coordinating the defense from the heart of the human formation. Despite the impossible odds, her expression was calm, almost serene. Captain Harper, are you ready? The Defiance is in position, Admiral. All weapon systems are online. The crew is prepared. Good. Remember the plan. We are not trying to win this battle in the traditional sense. We are trying to change the rules of the game. We need to hurt them badly enough that they start asking questions they have never asked before. Denise nodded. Understood, Admiral. We will make them remember this day. The battle began when Vorik's fleet advanced in standard correction formation. It was a tactic that had worked countless times before. An overwhelming wall of firepower designed to crush any resistance through sheer numbers. The Cassani fleet master expected the humans to either scatter in panic or attempt a futile last. What happened instead was something he had never seen in 37. Corrections, the human fleet did not retreat. It attacked. The first wave of human vessels drove directly into the heart of the enemy formation, their weapons blazing at point-blank range. It was a suicidal tactic by conventional standards, sacrificing the advantages of distance and maneuverability for raw, devastating firepower. Human ships died by the dozens in the opening minutes, but they took 3 times their number of enemy vessels with them. On the bridge of the Defiance, Denise Harper felt the ship shudder as enemy fire raked across the shields. Warning lights flashed across every station, and damage reports flooded in from all decks. But she did not order a retreat. "Target their flagship," she commanded. "All forward batteries. Maximum power." The Defiance was not the only ship following this aggressive doctrine. Across the battlefield, human captains were making the same choice, driving their vessels into the teeth of the enemy fleet, accepting horrific losses in exchange for equally horrific damage. The first hour cost the human fleet 38 ships, but it cost the hegemony 112, including Vorik's flagship Obedience. The fleet master's last transmission was a confused demand for reinforcements before his vessel exploded under concentrated human fire. Command of the correction force fell to Subfleet Master the Zara, who quickly realized that she was facing something unprecedented. Human tactics continued to confound her attempts to establish order. Small strike groups would appear from behind asteroids and planetary bodies, delivered devastating attacks, and disappear before her forces could respond. Larger formations would feign weakness, drawing in enemy ships. Then spring traps that annihilated entire squadrons. Human electronic warfare systems disrupted hegemony communications, leaving individual captains isolated and confused. False signals and phantom readings made it impossible to know where the real threats were. Ships that thought they were pursuing wounded prey found themselves surrounded and destroyed by the third hour. The perfect sphere of the correction force had collapsed into chaos. Hegemony ships bumped into each other, fired on their own allies in the confusion, broke formation to chase enemies that were not there. The disciplined fleet that had terrified 100 worlds had become a scattered mob. On the Resolution, Admiral Patricia Cole watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. The plan was working better than she had hoped. Human ships were still dying, but they were dying at a ratio that made victory impossible for the enemy. "Admiral, the Defiance is reporting critical damage," an aide informed her. "Captain Harper is requesting permission to ram the enemy command vessel." Patricia closed her eyes for a moment. She knew Denise Harper. She had trained her, mentored her, watched her grow from a promising young officer into one of the finest captains in the fleet. The thought of losing her was painful beyond words, but she also knew what this battle meant. Every ship that took an enemy with it was one more step toward changing the galaxy forever. "Permission granted," she said quietly. "Tell Captain Harper that her sacrifice will not be forgotten." The Defiance made its final run at full speed, its remaining weapons blazing until the last moment. When it struck the hegemony command vessel, both ships vanished in a ball of fire that lit up the darkness of space for a brief, brilliant instant. By the 6th hour, the battle was over. The surviving hegemony ships, less than a third of the original force, retreated into faster-than-light travel. They left behind the wreckage of 267 of their vessels. Scattered across the Sol system like a graveyard of broken dreams, the human fleet had lost 84 ships, nearly half its strength. But they had won. For the first time in 4,000 years, a correction force had been defeated. Admiral Patricia Cole broadcast a simple message to her surviving ships. "Today we proved something that the galaxy had forgotten. We proved that courage matters. We proved that spirit matters. We proved that a free people fighting for their homes cannot be easily conquered." She paused, looking at the tactical display showing the retreating enemy vessels. "Let them go home and tell their masters what happened here. Let them explain how a young species with a tiny fleet made them run. Let them spread the word to every corner of the galaxy. Humanity said no, and humanity made it stick." Across the battered human fleet, tired crews cheered. They had paid a terrible price. but they had purchased something beyond value. They had purchased hope. The news of the battle at Seoul spread across the galaxy faster than any ship could travel. Traders carried it from system to system. Encrypted messages passed through the communication networks of tributary worlds. Whispered conversations spread it through the labor camps and processing facilities where conquered species toiled under. Council's supervision, a young species called Humanity had done the impossible. They had said no to the Tribute Council. They had destroyed a correction fleet. They had made the masters of the galaxy ET on a mining world called the Sarah Prime. A group of Kelvani workers gathered in their barracks after their shift ended. They were small beings, barely reaching human waist height, with large eyes and delicate hands that made them valuable for detailed work. Their species had been paying tribute for 800 years. Is it true? One of them asked, keeping her voice low to avoid the monitoring systems. Did they really win? The reports say 2/3 of the correction fleet was destroyed, another replied. The humans lost half their ships, but they held their ground. The hegemony retreated. Silence fell over the group as they processed this information. For 800 years, their people had believed that resistance was impossible. For 800 years, they had accepted their fate because they saw no alternative. Now suddenly, there was an alternative. They can do it, the first Kelvani said slowly. Then maybe, ... She did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. Everyone in the room understood what she meant. Similar conversations were happening on hundreds of worlds, thousands of languages, among species that had long since given up hope. A single word was spreading through the galaxy like a virus. A word that the Council had worked for millennia to erase from the vocabulary of conquered peoples. No. On the Council station. High Arbiter Thiessen convened an emergency session to address the crisis. The great chamber that had witnessed humanity's defiance was now filled with tension and something that had not been present for thousands of years: fear. This cannot be allowed to stand, declared Representative Morvith of the Syndicate Worlds. He was a massive creature, armored in natural chitin. His species having been elevated to near-equal status within the hegemony through centuries of loyal service. If one species defies us successfully, others will follow. We must assemble the full military might of the hegemony and crush these humans completely. And what will that cost us? Asked Observer Cassia, an ancient being who had served on the Council for 3 centuries. Her form was mostly energy now, her physical body long since abandoned, and her perspective was longer than most. The humans destroyed 2/3 of a standard correction force. To guarantee victory, we would need to commit resources currently maintaining order in at least 17 sectors. Do you propose we leave those sectors unguarded? The alternative is to show weakness, Morvith growled. The tributary species are already talking, already wondering. If we do not respond with overwhelming force, we invite rebellion across the entire hegemony. The rebellion is already beginning, Cassia replied calmly. Our monitors are reporting unusual activity on 43 worlds. Increased communication between workers, secret meetings, hoarding of materials. The humans have lit a fire that cannot be extinguished by simply destroying the humans. The San's coils shifted uneasily on his throne. Then what do you propose? Before Cassia could answer, an aide rushed into the chamber with urgent news. Hi, Arbiter. We have received a transmission from the humans. The message was broadcast to the entire chamber. Admiral Patricia Cole appeared in the hologram, her uniform still bearing the marks of battle, her face tired but determined. Behind her, the stars of human space glittered like defiant jewels. Hi, Arbiter Thiessen, members of the Tribute Council. I am Admiral Patricia Cole of United Earth's Command. I am contacting you with a message and a warning. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried a weight that seemed to fill the entire chamber. Your correction fleet has been defeated. You may send another. You may send 10 more. But I want you to understand something clearly. Every ship you send to Seoul is a ship that is not somewhere else. Every fleet you commit against us is a fleet that cannot maintain your empire. And while you are fighting us, Every other species you have oppressed will be watching. They will be learning. They will be remembering something that you have tried to make them forget. Patricia leaned forward slightly, her eyes seeming to meet the gaze of every being in the chamber. They will be remembering that they have a choice. They will be remembering that they can say no. You have spent millennia teaching the galaxy that resistance is futile. We have spent one battle teaching them that resistance is possible. Which lesson do you think they will remember? She straightened, and her voice took on a formal quality. We do not want war with the hegemony. We did not seek this conflict. But we will not submit, and we will not surrender. If you send more fleets, we will destroy them. If you burn our worlds, we will burn yours in return. We have nothing left to lose, and that makes us more dangerous than you can imagine. The transmission shifted, showing not just Patricia, but images from across human space. Shipyards working around the clock to build new vessels. Training facilities, preparing new crews. Scientists developing new weapons. A civilization mobilizing for total war. You have a choice, High Arbiter, Patricia continued. You can continue this conflict and watch your empire crumble around you as conquered species find their courage. Or you can do something the Council has never done before. You can accept that there are species in this galaxy who will not kneel. You can learn to live with neighbors instead of servants. She paused one final time. Decision is yours. But remember this. Every day you wait to make it, more species hear our story. More species remember that they have a voice. More species learn the word that you tried so hard to erase. The transmission ended with a single word displayed in galactic script. No. In the silence that followed, Thiessen looked around at his fellow council members. For the first time in his long life, he saw uncertainty in their eyes. For the first time, he saw fear. And somewhere in the back of his mind, he heard a whisper. A terrible, treasonous whisper that he could not silence. What if they are right? What if the galaxy is changing? What if the age of tribute is ending? Across the galaxy, on 1,000 worlds, beings of 100 species looked up at the stars and asked themselves the same questions. They thought about the humans who had dared to say no. They thought about the price of freedom and the cost of slavery, and slowly, one by one, they began to make their choice. On Earth, Admiral Patricia Cole stood on a balcony overlooking the Pacific Ocean, watching the sun set over the water. Commander Dennis Grant stood beside her as he had through so many battles. Do you think they will come again? He asked. Yes, she said. Maybe not immediately. Maybe not in the same way. But yes, they will try again. The Council cannot allow our example to stand. And we will be ready. Patricia turned to face him, and despite the exhaustion of the past weeks, despite the losses they had suffered, there was something unbroken in her eyes. Something fierce and proud and utterly human. We will always be ready, she said. That is who we are. That is who we have always been. We are the species that looked at the impossible and said no. We are the species that taught a galaxy full of slaves that freedom is worth fighting for. She looked back at the stars, now appearing in the darkening sky. They wanted our answer. They got it. Now let them figure out what to do with it. Whatever they decide, whatever comes next, one thing is certain. She smiled. And it was the smile of a species that had faced extinction and refused to blink. Humanity will never kneel. And across the galaxy, in barracks and workhouses, in mines and factories, in the hearts of beings who had forgotten what hope felt like, a single word echoed like a promise. No, the reckoning had begun.